The silence after I told them was so thick, you could have cut it with a butter knife. I'm Yvonne, 32, and I just dropped the bomb that I was pregnant. Not married, not even in a relationship anymore. Juan, the baby's father, was 29 and had proven himself commitment-phobic enough to make a hermit look like a social butterfly. So, yeah, I was doing this alone. My parents, Francesca and Kirk, both in their mid-60s, sat across from me at the polished dining table, their faces carefully blank. My brother, Ellis, 34, and his wife, Reagan, 31, were there too, silently dissecting me with their eyes. No one said congratulations. No one asked if I was okay. Just a quiet, collective sigh of disappointment that seemed to suck all the air out of the room. My mom finally managed, "Well, Yvonne, that's certainly a development." My dad just grunted, adjusting his tie. It was classic man family. Any deviation from the meticulously planned perfect image was met with a wall of polite disdain. Before we continue, drop a comment with where you're watching from. I love seeing my global reach. A few weeks later, the universe, with its cruel sense of humor, decided to rub salt in the wound. Ellis and Reagan announced they were expecting. And suddenly, the Mann family dining room transformed. My mom, Francesca, burst into tears. Tears of pure, unadulterated joy. My dad, Kirk, actually clapped Ellis on the back, a rare display of paternal affection. Reagan, blonde and polished as ever, glowed. It was a proper celebration, complete with champagne and endless toasts to their miracle baby. My development was already a distant memory. Fast forward a couple of months.
It was another one of our obligatory Sunday dinners, the kind where you brace yourself for a full evening of passive aggression and veiled criticisms. Reagan, who was now showing a little, was holding court. My parents were practically orbiting her, hanging on her every word. She pulled out a sleek tablet, her perfectly manicured finger swiping through a digital gift registry. "Oh, Francesca, Kirk, look at this!" she chirped, her voice just a touch too loud. "I found the most divine nursery designer. She does bespoke murals and has a waiting list a mile long, but I managed to snag her." My mum's eyes lit up. "A designer? How wonderful, darling! How much would something like that cost?" Reagan gave a little dismissive wave of her hand. "Oh, nothing too crazy. She quoted us around 40,000 all in." I nearly choked on my water. $40,000 for a nursery. My parents didn't even blink. "Consider it done, dear," my dad said, a proud smile stretching across his face. "Only the best for our first grandchild." I sat there, my own growing belly a quiet, ignored presence under my loose sweater. Reagan caught my eye across the table. She offered a syrupy smile, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. "And Yvonne, darling, I'm sure your little one will be just as happy with... well, a happy little surprise, won't it?" The words hung in the air, dripping with condescension. A happy little surprise. Not a miracle, not a blessing, just an unplanned inconvenience. It wasn't new, though. It never was. This was the story of my life. Ellis, the golden boy, always first, always celebrated. Me, the quiet, sensible one, always second, always an afterthought. My successes were met with a shrug, my struggles with a lecture. Their love was a spotlight, and I was always standing just outside the beam. Dinner eventually wrapped up, the air still thick with the scent of roasted chicken and Reagan's floral perfume. As I was gathering my things, my mom walked over, a large black trash bag clutched in her hand. "Oh, Yvonne, almost forgot," she said, her tone offhand. "I found these in the attic. Thought you might want them. They're from when Ellis was born. Good as new, practically. She pushed the bag into my hands. It was heavy, crinkly. I peered inside. A faded, yellowed onesie with a suspicious brown stain. A tiny, unraveling blanket that smelled faintly of mothballs and old cigarettes. And at the very top, a crumpled, pink paper crown, the kind you get from a cheap party store, flattened and forgotten. The trash bag of Ellis's old baby clothes sat in the corner of my spare room for weeks, a silent, musty monument to my family's priorities. I was still 32, now visibly pregnant, and the due date was creeping closer. My own baby shower, when it finally happened, felt less like a celebration and more like an obligation my parents reluctantly fulfilled. It was held in their backyard, a Sunday afternoon affair. My mom, Francesca, had clearly thrown it together at the last minute. There were mismatched plastic tablecloths, some deflated balloons tied to a wilting rosebush, and a spread of lukewarm lasagna from a local Italian place, clearly leftovers from a previous gathering. The decor looked like it had been salvaged from a garage sale, a faded banner that read, "It's a boy." They hadn't bothered to get a new one, just taped over the boy with a piece of paper that said, "Baby," and a few sad-looking baby rattles scattered on the tables. The guest list was sparse. My best friend, Mia, 33, was there, looking uncomfortable in her dress, her eyes constantly darting to me with a mixture of sympathy and controlled fury. My aunt, Carol, my mom's sister, made a brief appearance, clutching a small, generic gift bag. Most of the other attendees were distant relatives my parents probably felt obligated to invite. "Oh, Yvonne, you're so strong, aren't you?" My cousin Brenda chirped, balancing a paper plate of crusty lasagna. "Always the independent one. Not really the motherly type, though, are you? More of a career woman." I just smiled, a tight, polite thing that didn't reach my eyes. "I'm looking forward to it, Brenda." My Aunt Carol came over later, patting my arm. "You know, your mother always said you were the sensible one. Ellis, he was always so fragile, needed more looking after. You were always so self-sufficient." It was meant as a compliment, I think, but it landed like a backhanded jab. Self-sufficient translated to not needing their attention, therefore not deserving it. I remembered being 16, a skinny, intense teenager, and winning second place in the regional science fair. It was a huge deal for me, a complex project on sustainable energy. I'd worked on it for months, sacrificing weekends and evenings. I came home, bursting with pride, clutching my silver medal. My dad, Kirk, had barely looked up from his newspaper. "Still not first, huh?" He'd grunted. That was it. That was the extent of his acknowledgement. It was always like that. Ellis got a brand new car for his 16th birthday. I got a lecture on debt consolidation and a spreadsheet. The following Saturday, Reagan's baby shower was plastered all over my social media feed. My phone buzzed with notifications from various family members. It was held at the Riverbend Mansion, a sprawling estate that cost more to rent for an afternoon than my entire annual salary. The photos showed a professionally catered affair, tables laden with gourmet food and champagne flutes. Every surface was adorned with fresh floral arrangements in soft pastels. A string quartet played in the background. Reagan, radiant in a designer maternity dress, was surrounded by a throng of beaming guests, including her own sister, Violet, 30, who looked just as polished and smug. My parents were front and center in every picture, beaming with pride, looking like they'd won the lottery. I scrolled through the photos, one after another, the contrast stark and brutal. My backyard gathering with lukewarm lasagna and a repurposed banner, her opulent mansion event with bespoke everything. The wounds, already deep, twisted and burned. I felt a familiar tightness in my chest, a cold, hard knot of resentment that had been building for decades. I put my phone down, the screen still glowing with images of Reagan's perfect, privileged life. The silence in my small apartment felt heavy. I walked over to my desk, picked up my laptop, and opened my email. There it was, a new message, subject line. LLC acquisition approved. I clicked it open, a small, knowing smile finally touching my lips. The message confirmed the finalization of the purchase. My marble brownstone, bought quietly, anonymously, through an LLC no one in my family knew existed. A property that, even unrenovated, was worth more than their entire retirement fund. The first tangible step in a plan that had been simmering for years. A plan they were about to walk right into. Months passed. The trash bag of Ellis's baby clothes eventually made its way to the charity donation bin, untouched. My own baby, a daughter I named Clara, arrived quietly, without fanfare. She was perfect, tiny, and fierce, with a surprisingly strong grip. I was 33 now, a new mother, navigating the exhaustion and overwhelming love that came with it. A few weeks after Clara's birth, Reagan's son, Liam, made his grand entrance. And by grand, I mean a full-blown media blitz. My family's social media feeds were immediately plastered with professional photos of Liam, swaddled in silk, tiny hands clutching Ellis's finger, Reagan looking ethereal and triumphant in every shot. "Our miracle baby has arrived," my mom, Francesca, gushed in a caption accompanying a photo of her and Kirk beaming over the bassinet. It was endless. Every day, a new picture, a new anecdote, a new hashtag celebrating the arrival of the Mann family heir. Clara, meanwhile, received a single mention. A group text from my mom, sent to the entire family chat, read, "Yvonne had her baby too. A girl. Everyone healthy." That was it. No photo, no name, just a terse, almost reluctant acknowledgement. It stung, but it wasn't unexpected. It was just another brick in the wall they'd built between us. Then, about 2 months after Liam's birth, my phone rang. It was my mom. I braced myself. "Yvonne, darling," she began, her voice unusually solicitous. "How are you? And little... what's her name again?" "Clara," I said, my voice flat. "We're fine." "Right, Clara. Lovely. Listen, I'm calling about Liam's christening. We're planning it for next month. It's going to be a lovely affair, very intimate, just close family and a few key associates. And we were wondering... well, Ellis and Reagan would be delighted if you would consider being Liam's godmother." I almost dropped the phone. Godmother? After everything? "Really?" I asked, feigning surprise. "Yes, darling. It would look really strong for the family, you know, to be united, especially with, well, everything." The everything hung in the air, code for my unmarried status and the general disappointment I represented. It wasn't about me or Liam. It was about appearances, about showing a united front to their key associates. "I'd be honored," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. This was it, the opening I'd been waiting for. "But I do have one condition." My mom's tone immediately shifted, a hint of her usual impatience creeping in. "A condition? Yvonne, this is a great honor." "I know," I said, my voice calm, unwavering, "and my condition is that the christening must be held at my place." There was a beat of stunned silence on the other end. Then, my mom's scoff, loud and dismissive. "Your place? Yvonne, darling, you live in a tiny apartment. We're talking about a christening for Liam, with important guests. It needs to be appropriate, elegant." "It will be," I said, my voice still even. "It will be more than appropriate, more than elegant. It will be unforgettable, and it's my only condition." I could hear her whispering to my dad on the other end. Then Ellis's voice, faint but clear. He must have been nearby. My mom came back on the line, her voice strained. "Yvonne, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable, Mom. It's my condition. Take it or leave it." Another pause. Then Ellis's voice, clearer this time. "Mom, just let her. It's fine. It'll be good. It shows we're a family. It's Yvonne's way of contributing." He was always so passive, so easily swayed, but this time his push worked in my favor. He probably just wanted to get it over with. Finally, my mom sighed, a sound of profound exasperation. "Fine, Yvonne. Fine. But if it's not up to par, I'm holding you personally responsible." "Understood," I said, the smile now fully formed. A few days later, Reagan called, her voice tight with forced pleasantness. "Yvonne, so excited you're being Liam's godmother. And how lovely of you to offer your apartment for the christening. It's so quaint. It'll make us look so gracious, don't you think? Showing that we're not above celebrating in a more intimate setting." She clearly thought she was playing me, making it sound like a favor. She was doing me. "Oh, I think it will be quite the setting, Reagan," I replied, my voice sweet as honey. "You just wait." As soon as I hung up, I dialed Mia. She answered on the second ring. "You won't believe what they just asked me," I said, a thrill running through me. "Let me guess," Mia said, her voice dry. "They want you to babysit Liam while they go on a cruise." "Better," I said. "They want me to be Liam's godmother, and I told them I'd only do it if the christening was at my place." Mia gasped. "No way! Your little apartment?" "Not my apartment, Mia," I corrected, looking around my current, modest living room. "My other place, the brownstone. Get the guest list. I want it full." They never saw me coming. Not really. They saw the quiet, frugal Yvonne, the one who always wore sensible shoes and never asked for anything. They saw the girl who got a debt consolidation spreadsheet for her 16th birthday, while Ellis got a car. What they didn't see was the girl who, at 18, used her meager savings from a part-time job to fund her own college applications, knowing full well her parents would only pay for Ellis's tuition. I was 19, a freshman in college, when I first stumbled upon a finance elective. It clicked. Something about compound interest, about market cycles, about the quiet power of strategic investment. While my peers were blowing their student loan money on spring break trips, I was devouring books on real estate, on stocks, on how the truly wealthy built their empires. I interned every summer, not for the prestige, but for the knowledge. I learned to live on almost nothing, saving every spare dollar. At 23, fresh out of college with a finance degree and a job at a mid-tier investment firm, I bought my first condo. It was a fixer-upper, a tiny, neglected unit in a decent neighborhood. I spent every evening and weekend of the next 2 years learning to paint, to tile, to install light fixtures. I watched YouTube tutorials. I haggled for materials. I worked until my hands ached. When I sold it at 25, I tripled my initial investment. No one knew. My parents would have scoffed, called it a hobby. Ellis would have asked if I needed help, then forgotten about it. That first flip was just the beginning. I kept my job, kept my head down, kept saving. I invested in more properties, always small, always undervalued. I learned the art of the anonymous LLC, a legal shield that allowed me to acquire assets without my name ever appearing on public records. It was a slow, meticulous process, fueled by every slight, every dismissive comment, every time I was overlooked. The $40,000 nursery for Liam? That was just another drop in the bucket of their casual disregard. The brownstone, the one I'd bought a few months ago through my anonymous LLC, was the culmination of a decade of quiet work. It was a $2.3 million property in a prime part of the city, a grand old dame of a house that had been neglected for years. I'd spent the last few months, even through the early stages of my pregnancy, overseeing its complete renovation. I'd poured my heart and my meticulously saved capital into it. Now, with Clara a few months old and the christening date set, the house was ready. It was minimalist, yes, but not cold. White marble floors gleamed under recessed lighting. Brass fixtures caught the light, adding warmth. The kitchen was a chef's dream, all professional-grade stainless steel and sleek, dark cabinetry. There were no flashy, ostentatious displays of wealth, just an undeniable air of quiet, understated luxury. It was a silent middle finger to everyone who had ever seen me as disposable, as less than. Mia, bless her fiercely loyal heart, was my co-conspirator. As soon as I told her my plan, her eyes had lit up. "This is epic, Yvonne," she'd said, already pulling out her phone. "Let's make sure they never forget it." She took charge of the christening arrangements, following my instructions to the letter. "Luxury, but no flash," I'd told her. "Class, not crass." We hired a private chef known for his exquisite seasonal menus. Crystal glassware shimmered on the custom-made dining table. Fresh floral designs, elegant and understated, adorned every room. Mia handled the invitations, ensuring the guest list was indeed full. Not just family, but a carefully selected group of my own friends, colleagues, and even a few influential acquaintances from the finance world who knew nothing of my family drama. The week before the christening, I walked through the house one last time, checking every detail. The scent of fresh paint and expensive wood polish still lingered. In the nursery, a beautifully appointed room for Clara, I placed a small, ornately carved wooden box on the dresser. Inside, nestled on a velvet cushion, was a single, sealed envelope. My name was written on it in elegant gold ink. It wasn't a gift for Liam. It was for me. A reminder. And it was going to be part of the show. The day of the christening dawned bright and clear, almost as if the universe itself was ready for the show. I was 33, Clara was a few months old, and the brownstone hummed with quiet anticipation. Mia had arrived early, a whirlwind of efficiency, putting the final touches on the floral arrangements and directing the private chef. I dressed Clara in a simple, cream-colored christening gown, a quiet contrast to the elaborate, lace-trimmed outfit I knew Liam would be wearing. The first guests to arrive were my parents, Francesca and Kirk, followed closely by Ellis, Reagan, and baby Liam. My mom, still convinced she was walking into my quaint little apartment, paused on the grand marble steps leading up to the front door, her eyes widening. Kirk, usually stoic, actually faltered mid-stride. I opened the door, a polite smile on my face. "Welcome," I said, stepping aside. They walked in, and the silence that followed was more satisfying than any shout. Francesca's jaw went slack. Kirk's eyes darted around, taking in the soaring ceilings, the gleaming marble, the subtle scent of fresh flowers and expensive wood. Reagan, ever the performer, tried to compose herself, but her polished facade cracked. "Wait, you live here?" Reagan whispered, her voice barely audible, her eyes scanning the vast, open-plan living space. The gears in her head were practically grinding, trying to reconcile the Yvonne who lives in a tiny apartment with the Yvonne who clearly owned this. My mom recovered first, though not gracefully. She smoothed her dress, trying to project an air of nonchalance. "It's beautiful, Yvonne," she said, her voice a little too loud, a little too forced. "Kind of minimalist, isn't it?" She clearly hated it, but couldn't admit it. It wasn't the ornate, traditional style she preferred, the kind that screamed old money, even if it was newly acquired. This was different, modern, undeniably expensive, and completely outside her frame of reference for my taste. Ellis, bless his oblivious heart, just looked impressed. "Wow, Yvonne, this is incredible. When did you—" He trailed off, probably realizing he had no idea how I could afford such a place. I just smiled. "It's been a project." As more guests arrived, the initial shock on my family's faces became a source of quiet amusement for me. Reagan's sister, Violet, 30, arrived, her eyes immediately going wide with a mixture of awe and thinly veiled jealousy. She looked at Reagan, then back at the house, a silent question passing between them. The room began to fill. My friends, Mia among them, greeted me warmly, their eyes sparkling with knowing amusement. My colleagues from the finance world, sharp and impeccably dressed, mingled easily, their conversations punctuated by the clink of crystal glasses. And then the praise started. "Yvonne, this home is absolutely stunning. I had no idea you had such an eye for design. This is truly exquisite, Yvonne. You've done an incredible job." For once, the eyes were on me. Not on Ellis, not on Reagan, not on my parents. Just me. My mom, Francesca, kept trying to interject, to steer conversations back to Liam, but the momentum was against her. People were genuinely curious about my house, my life. Reagan, meanwhile, was a study in barely contained fury. She kept her smile plastered on, but her eyes were constantly scanning, searching for an explanation, for a flaw. She whispered furiously to Ellis, who just shrugged, looking overwhelmed. Just as the christening ceremony was about to begin, a soft chime echoed through the house. The front door opened again. A tall, distinguished man with silver hair, impeccably dressed, stepped inside. He looked around, then spotted me. "Yvonne, darling!" he boomed, a warm smile on his face. He walked directly to me, completely bypassing my parents and Ellis, who were standing closer to the door. He was Mr. Henderson, my next-door neighbor, a retired CEO of a major tech company. He lived in the brownstone right next to mine. "Loved the cocktail party last week," he said, giving my arm a friendly squeeze. "Your chef was divine. We must do it again soon." Reagan, who was standing right next to me, barely masked her confusion. Her eyes darted from Mr. Henderson to me, then back to the opulent room. A cocktail party? Last week? The gears in her head were grinding even harder now, trying to piece together the narrative of the frugal, quiet Yvonne with the woman who hosted cocktail parties for retired CEOs in a multi-million-dollar brownstone. The mask of polite graciousness she'd been wearing slipped just for a second, revealing a flicker of genuine shock and dawning horror. The christening ceremony itself was a blur of hushed prayers and polite smiles. Liam, in his elaborate lace, fussed a little, but was quickly soothed by Reagan. Clara, nestled in my arms, watched the proceedings with wide, curious eyes. My parents, Francesca and Kirk, stood stiffly beside Ellis and Reagan, their expressions a mixture of pride for Liam and thinly veiled confusion about their surroundings. Reagan kept glancing at me, her smile fixed, her eyes narrowed. Just before the godparent ceremony, the officiant, a kind-faced man from the local church, cleared his throat. And now, we'd like to invite Liam's godmother, Yvonne, to offer a small toast. A ripple went through the room. My parents exchanged a quick, nervous glance. Reagan's head snapped towards me, a flicker of alarm in her eyes. This wasn't in the script. I walked to the center of the room, holding Clara in one arm, and took the microphone from the officiant. The room fell silent. My voice was calm, clear, and projected effortlessly through the high-ceilinged space. Thank you all for coming today to celebrate the christening of Liam, a truly special child. I paused, letting my gaze sweep over the faces in the room, lingering for a fraction of a second on my parents, then on Reagan. I'm grateful to be Liam's godmother, I continued, my voice gaining a subtle, almost imperceptible edge. And as his godmother, I feel a responsibility to contribute to his future, to help lay a foundation for a life of value and purpose. I took a breath, my eyes locking onto Reagan's. Her jaw was already starting to tighten. We've heard a lot about Liam's auspicious beginnings. His nursery, for example, was valued at a rather impressive $40,000. A collective gasp rippled through the room. My parents' faces went pale. Reagan's eyes, usually so smug, were now wide with a dawning horror. Ellis looked confused, then a little embarrassed. I thought, I continued, my voice still perfectly even, that I would match that generosity, and then some. Tenfold, in fact. Another, louder gasp. A few murmurs broke out. I could feel the tension in the room, thick and palpable. To that end, I said, my voice ringing with quiet authority, I have established a trust fund for Liam in his name, with an initial deposit of $400,000. Reagan's jaw dropped, literally. It hung open, her perfectly made-up face a mask of disbelief. Francesca stared forward, her eyes glazed, unable to speak. Kirk looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Ellis, bless his heart, looked proud for a fleeting second, then utterly bewildered, then incredibly awkward as he registered the stunned silence and the furious looks from his wife and parents. This trust fund, I explained, my voice firm, comes with a few simple terms. It will remain untouched, accruing interest, until Liam's 25th birthday. My intention is to ensure that the next generation understands the true meaning of value, not just vanity. That they learn the importance of building a legacy, not merely inheriting one. I let the words hang in the air, watching the various reactions. The shock on my family's faces was priceless. the quiet admiration on Mia's, the impressed nods from my colleagues, I raised my free hand, the one not holding Clara, and gestured to the crystal glasses being held by the guests. "So, let's raise our glasses," I said, my voice crisp and final, "to building more than rooms. Let's build legacies." The room erupted in a flurry of movement. Glasses clinked. A few people offered hesitant applause. My parents were still frozen, staring at me as if I'd just grown a second head. Reagan, however, had finally found her voice. It was a strangled whisper, but I heard it. 400,000? She hissed to Ellis, her eyes still fixed on me, blazing with a mixture of disbelief and pure, unadulterated rage. The christening ended in a flurry of forced smiles and hurried goodbyes. My parents, Francesca and Kirk, were among the first to make their excuses, their faces still etched with a mixture of shock and indignation. Reagan and Ellis lingered, but their usual polished composure had completely evaporated. Reagan's eyes kept darting to me, then to the opulent surroundings, a silent, burning question in their depths. After the last guest had left, the house felt strangely quiet. Mia was in the kitchen, directing the cleanup crew, a satisfied smirk playing on her lips. I was gathering stray gift bags when my mom, Francesca, appeared in the kitchen doorway, her arms crossed, her expression thunderous. "What was that, Yvonne?" she demanded, her voice low and tight with fury. "That performance. You deliberately embarrassed us. You made a show of us in front of everyone." I didn't react. I picked up a linen napkin from the counter and began to meticulously fold it into a perfect square. "You asked me to be family, Mom," I said, my voice calm, almost detached. "This is me being family. I contributed. Generously, I might add." "Generously?" she scoffed, stepping closer. "You made us look like we were neglecting you, like we were poor." "Do you have any idea what people are saying?" "I imagine they're saying I'm a very generous godmother," I replied, still folding the napkin. "And that Liam is a very lucky baby." She sputtered, unable to form a coherent response. Her face was flushed, her eyes blazing. "This isn't over, Yvonne. You think you can just flaunt your money and make us look bad? This is not how a family behaves." "Perhaps not your family, Mom," I said, finally looking up, my gaze steady and unwavering. "But it's how my family will, and this is my home. You're welcome to leave if you're uncomfortable." She stared at me for a long moment, then turned on her heel and stormed out of the kitchen, muttering under her breath. Later, as I was putting Clara down for a nap, I heard hushed voices from the living room. It was Reagan and Violet, her sister, who had stayed behind. Their voices were low, but the house's acoustics carried snippets of their conversation. "How did she—" Reagan whispered, her voice laced with disbelief. "Where did she get that kind of money? Does Ellis know?" "I don't know, Reagan," Violet replied, her tone a mixture of awe and something that sounded suspiciously like schadenfreude. "She always was. Quiet. But this is insane. She's been living in that tiny apartment all this time. What's her game?" I smiled to myself. Their confusion was a sweet symphony. That evening, after Clara was asleep and Mia had left, my phone rang. It was Ellis. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Yvonne," he said, his voice quiet, almost hesitant. "Look, about today, I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything, Ellis," I replied, my voice softer than it had been with our mother. "No, I do," he insisted. "It was a lot. And I guess I never really saw it, did I? How different it was for you, with Mom and Dad. Everything." His voice was raw, vulnerable. It was a rare moment of genuine introspection from him. He wasn't trying to defend them, or himself. He was just seeing it. For the first time, perhaps, I thought of 16-year-old Yvonne watching Ellis get the keys to his shiny new car, a gift wrapped in a giant red bow, while I sat in my room, staring at the debt consolidation spreadsheet my father had given me. "You're the sensible one, Yvonne. You don't need a car. You need to learn responsibility." "It's okay, Ellis," I said, the words feeling strangely heavy. "It's been a long time coming." He sighed. "Yeah, I guess so. Look, I'm sorry, Yvonne, for everything, for not seeing it sooner. It wasn't a full reconciliation, not yet. But it was a start. A crack in the gilded cage." After we hung up, I walked into Clara's nursery. She was sleeping soundly in her crib, a tiny, perfect bundle. I picked up the ornately carved wooden box from her dresser. Inside, nestled on the velvet cushion, was the sealed envelope with my name in gold ink. It wasn't a gift for Liam. It was a diary, a letter to Clara that I'd been writing since I first found out I was pregnant. I opened it, pulled out the last page and picked up my pen. "Never let them decide your worth," I wrote, my hand steady. "Build your own." The weeks that followed the christening were interesting. Reagan, true to form, tried to reclaim her spotlight. Her social media posts became even more elaborate, showcasing designer baby clothes, extravagant playdates, and perfectly curated family outings. But it was too late. The narrative had shifted. Every time she posted a picture of Liam, the comment sections, even from distant relatives, subtly referenced the christening. "Look at Liam in his beautiful outfit. So lucky to have such a generous godmother," or "That trust fund is truly inspiring, Reagan." It was a quiet, constant hum, a reminder that the conversation had moved beyond her control. She couldn't outshine a $400,000 trust fund. My mom, Francesca, reduced contact significantly. The calls became fewer, the tone clipped and formal. She was embarrassed, clearly. The carefully constructed facade of the perfect Mann family, with their perfect golden son and his perfect wife, had been irrevocably cracked. My dad, Kirk, was even more distant, retreating into his usual silence, but I could feel the shift in his gaze when we did cross paths, a flicker of something akin to respect, mixed with deep discomfort. The family dynamic had irrevocably shifted. The hierarchy they had so carefully maintained for decades had been dismantled, not with a bang, but with a quiet, elegant reveal. One sunny afternoon, about a month after the christening, Mia and I were sitting on the rooftop terrace of the brownstone. Clara was asleep in her stroller beside us, the city skyline stretching out before us. The air was warm, a gentle breeze rustling through the potted herbs. "You know," Mia said, taking a sip of her iced tea, "you didn't burn the bridge, Yvonne. You flipped it. You made them walk across your bridge on your terms." I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. "I suppose I did." "So, how does it feel?" she asked, turning to me, her eyes searching mine. "All that planning, all that quiet work, the big reveal. Is it everything you thought it would be?" I looked out at the city, at the endless expanse of buildings, each one a testament to someone's ambition, someone's dream. It's complicated, I admitted. There's a thrill, absolutely. A deep, satisfying sense of vindication, of finally being seen on my own terms. I thought of Reagan's face, of my mother's stunned silence. That part was sweet. But, Mia prompted gently, but there's also an emptiness, I guess, I confessed. Revenge isn't purely sweet. It doesn't magically fill the hole they left. It doesn't give me back the childhood where I felt truly loved, truly valued, without conditions. Mia reached over and squeezed my hand. No, it doesn't. But it gives you something else. Freedom. And a future where you don't have to keep fighting for a crumb of their attention. I nodded, looking down at Clara, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. She was so innocent, so unaware of the battles I'd fought, the empire I'd built, all for her. My own journey had been solitary, driven by a need to prove my worth to people who never truly saw it. But Clara's journey would be different. I leaned over and gently kissed her forehead. The real legacy isn't proving them wrong, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. It's building something they can't touch, something that's truly mine, truly ours. I thought of the trash bag of stained baby clothes, the crusty lasagna, the dismissive comments. I thought of the pink paper crown, a symbol of their casual disregard. They had tried to bury me in cinders, to keep me small and unnoticed. But I had walked out of the flame, not just surviving, but thriving. And I was wearing pearls,